We feared that other continents might become so involved in war. Today, the fear has become a fact. But I believe that by overwhelming majorities in all the Americas, you and I, in the long run, will act together to protect, to defend our science, our culture, and our civilization.
I'm originally from the Bronx in New York City. We lived with my grandparents until my parents got an apartment in another neighborhood in the Bronx. I had such a limited experience in dealing with other people that it really wasn't until I got to junior high school. A bunch of the students there were Italian. I was so excited to meet somebody that wasn't named Finkelstein or Horowitz. A number of years ago, my mom died, and there was a box from 1945 with the flag that was sent by the government to originally Melvin Spatz' wife. The reason that I ended up being named after him was my mother was pregnant with my brother at the time when he was missing in action. He was missing in February of 1945, and it wasn't actually until April that they knew he was actually gone. He was actually one of the killed in action. It was a picture of him, this very handsome man with a mustache, wearing his army hat, and it was this beautiful picture. I was in my grandmother's house that I would always see of my uncle. We received this flag a number of years ago, and then my wife Kathy and I, on 2 different occasions, went to Europe. One cousin, 25 years ago, who was in the Air Force, was in Luxembourg and went to visit his grave. So the only thing we knew about him was that there was a picture of his grave. And my wife said, you know, we're going to Paris this year, and Luxembourg is pretty close. So why don't we look into finding out about where he's actually buried in Luxembourg? On the last trip we made to Paris, the last 2 days, we decided to take the train up to Luxembourg and actually go to visit his grave. Once we went in, there was a woman named Lauren who was the caretaker. She had the job that was passed down to her from, I believe it was her father. She was so happy to see us because we were actually a relative of somebody who was buried there. She took a pail with her with a cup. She then reached in, took some sand that was in this cup that she told us was actually from the beach from Normandy, from the D-Day invasion. She took the sand and rubbed it on the gravestone, and you could then see the names more distinctly. She then went back to the office. We stayed for a little while, and she came to get us, brought us back to the office. Then she came out with a whole folder of information about my uncle. Because of the internet, 25 years later from the last relative who visited, all this information about his life then became available to us. We had pictures of his wedding. We had pictures from the family. There's even paperwork from originally the telegram sent to the family when he was missing in action. There's another telegram saying that he was actually killed in action. We have a copy of the certificate sent to the family when he got a Purple Heart. And all this other information about a little local newspaper in the Bronx that somebody wrote a story about my uncle, about what a wonderful guy he was. He was involved in the Battle of the Bulge, the major battle in 1945 that General Patton was in charge of the Third Army. We found out that my uncle actually survived going through the Battle of the Bulge, and he made his way into Germany where he was actually killed. General Patton is also buried there. He was wounded severely from a car accident. It broke his neck, and he was the only one that was actually hurt. 2 weeks later, he died. His wife wanted to bring him back to California, where he was from. Other people had other ideas, and finally, after several discussions, they came up with the idea that we think he'd probably like to be buried here with his men, that he was in charge of. So at the cemetery, near the top of this hill, there's one lone grave, and that's the grave of General Patton. Further down is 5,000 other graves, mostly from the Battle of the Bulge. In the last number of years, we got very involved in working with veterans. Because of how involved we've been in Veterans Affairs in the last number of years, it was a real honor for us to go there because we had no idea about how much information is now available thanks to the internet. And we truly live in an amazing age where something from 1945, if you dig hard enough, is actually available online now. My uncle was drafted near the end of the war, and he was killed in February, and the war was over not that much further into 1945. So up to that point, he had survived probably several battles, including the Battle of the Bulge, which was a horrendous experience for the soldiers who survived it. My uncle, somebody who left one country to try to get a better life, sacrificed his life. Somebody who earned the citizenship that he earned. What's remarkable is that here somebody was killed in 1945 that basically came alive for us. A story was written about my uncle. It says, his poem to his baby son, which appeared in a recent Clarion, was prophetic. Soon after that came the report that Mel was missing in action, followed by the report that he was killed in action. It said that he would gladly give his life, that his wife and child may live free from fear and oppression and safe from another such catastrophe as we are undergoing today. It makes me so sad now that from what I've read about, from the paperwork that we got, I just wish I knew him because he seemed like such an amazing man, such an extraordinary person. If your parents are still alive, or your grandparents are still alive, learn as much as you can about them while they're still alive, because once they're gone, all those questions are going to go unanswered. What's interesting for me and my wife is that we're not veterans, but yet they become such an important part of our life, that the respect and honor and memory that they deserve, I think, is so important that hopefully it's going to continue in this country, because somebody's sacrifice should be appreciated.